They call him the monster, but monsters are supposed to be mythical. Naoya Inoue is all too real. With punches that defy physics and a mindset forged in fire, this small-statured fighter from Japan has struck fear into the hearts of champions across the globe. He annihilates. His punches, they don't just knock opponents out, they break spirits. His speed, it's so precise it looks like he's hitting slow-motion targets. But here's the twist. This isn't some hulking heavyweight throwing wild haymakers. A fighter so small by boxing standards that his opponents often underestimate him, right up until they hit the canvas. But how did a quiet boy from Yokohama become one of boxing's greatest legends? How did he rewrite history and crush expectations at every turn? Stick around, because today we're diving into the rise, the dominance, and the unstoppable force that is Naoya Inoue. But where does his story begin? What drives this so-called monster? Is it raw talent? Relentless training? Or something deeper? Something that only he knows? What makes him so unbeatable? And can anyone take him down? Stick around. Because this isn't just the story of a boxer. This is the story of how greatness is forged, one devastating punch at a time. Naoya Inoue wasn't born a monster. In fact, his story starts quietly in the suburbs of Yokohama, Japan, a city known for its bustling ports, not for producing boxing prodigies. But even as a young boy, there was something about Naoya that set him apart. His father, Shingo, saw it first. A quiet intensity, a focus that most kids simply don't have. Shingo wasn't just Naoya's dad, he was his coach, his strategist, and perhaps most importantly, the person who taught him to dream big. From the age of 5, Naoya's life revolved around one thing, boxing. While most kids were playing with toys or watching cartoons, Naoya was learning the fundamentals. Punch after punch, drill after drill, morning runs before the sun came up, long hours in the gym after school. It wasn't just a hobby, it was an obsession. But this wasn't your typical training routine. Shingo didn't just teach Naoya how to throw punches. He taught him how to think like a predator before they existed, how to calculate the perfect moment to strike. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about precision, timing, and control. By the time Naoya stepped into the amateur circuit, the whispers had already begun. This kid is different, and they weren't wrong. In a division where knockouts are practically unheard of, Naoya racked up 48 stoppages. 48. His record? A staggering 75 wins and just 5 losses. But here's the thing. Even as Naoya dominated, he faced an uphill battle. In amateur boxing, fights are short, just 3 rounds. His hard-hitting, wear-you-down style didn't always fit the format, and yet he found ways to win. Every punch, every step forward was a glimpse of what was coming. His opponents? They could see it too. The way he moved, the way he thought 2 steps ahead, the way his punches didn't just land, they hurt. Everyone knew it. This kid wasn't just competing, he was evolving. By the time he won Japan's national championship in 2012, it was clear the amateur stage couldn't contain him anymore. He wasn't just another boxer chasing titles. He was a force waiting to be unleashed. And at just 19 years old, he and his team made the decision that would change everything. Naoya Inoue was ready to go pro. But what happened next wasn't just a debut. It was the beginning of a reign that would shake the very foundations of the boxing world. And it started with one simple question. Who could stop the monster? The moment Naoya Inoue turned pro, the boxing world had no idea what was coming. At just 19 years old, he wasn't just stepping into a new chapter, he was stepping into a storm. But here's the thing about storms. You don't realize how dangerous they are until they're already upon you. From the very beginning, Naoya didn't look for easy fights or soft landings. His first 7 opponents, all dispatched with terrifying ease. Each victory sent a message. This isn't your average prospect. Then came the real test. April 6th, 2014. Naoya was just 20 years old, a mere 6 fights into his career, and yet he was stepping into the ring with Adrian Hernandez, a seasoned champion who had held the WBC light flyweight title for years. The experts weren't exactly kind. They called it a mismatch, but not in Naoya's favor. Hernandez was bigger, he was stronger, he had more experience. To the outside world, it looked like Naoya was being thrown to the wolves, but inside the ring, it was Hernandez who looked out of place. From the opening bell, Naoya didn't just fight, he dismantled. Every punch was calculated, every move a trap. By the 6th round, Hernandez, the reigning champion, looked like he'd been in the ring with someone far beyond his weight class. An 11th round stoppage crowned Naoya as the new WBC light flyweight champion. And just like that, at 20 years old, Naoya Inoue was a world champion. But here's what separates Naoya from most fighters. He wasn't satisfied. In fact, just months later, he made a decision that stunned everyone. Most young champions would look to defend their belt, rack up experience, and solidify their place. Not Naoya. In only his 8th fight, he moved up 2 weight classes to super flyweight. Why? Because he was hungry. Hungry for bigger challenges. Hungrier still to prove that he wasn't just a champion, he was a phenomenon. His opponent, Omar Narvaez, a veteran with 46 wins and only 1 loss. A loss, by the way, to another legend, Nonito Donaire. Narvaez was known for his durability and ring IQ. He'd faced countless world-class fighters and walked away with his hand raised. But against Naoya, he didn't even last 2 rounds. The fight was a demolition. Narvaez hit the canvas 4 times before the referee waved it off. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Naoya Inoue wasn't here to play it safe. He was here to dominate, and he was doing it with a kind of ferocity boxing hadn't seen in years. The whispers turned into roars. Who was this kid? How could someone so young, so fresh, take apart world champions like they were amateurs? And most importantly, how far could he go? Naoya Inoue was no longer just a prospect. He wasn't even just a champion. He was becoming something more, something unstoppable. And as he climbed higher, leaving broken opponents in his wake, one thing became clear. This wasn't just the rise of a boxer. This was the rise of a legend. But Naoya was just getting started. His next move? A division that would test every ounce of his skill and endurance. The Bantamweight division, where some of the most dangerous fighters in the world were waiting. Would they finally be the ones to stop the monster? Or was Naoya about to write the next chapter of his dominance? The Bantamweight division wasn't just another weight class. It was a battlefield. It was where some of the toughest, most experienced fighters in the world live. And yet, Naoya Inoue didn't just enter this division, he made it his playground. Naoya set his sights on a new challenge, the WBA Bantamweight title. His opponent, Jamie McDonnell, a towering champion with years of experience and a reputation for breaking down opponents over time. But against Naoya, he didn't even stand a chance. From the very first bell, it was clear that McDonnell was completely out of his depth. Naoya's punches landed like thunderbolts, each one shaking McDonnell to his core. Less than 2 minutes into the first round, a vicious body shot crumpled McDonnell, and the fight was over. Just like that, Naoya Inoue became a 2-division world champion. But this was only the beginning. Next came Emmanuel Rodriguez in May 2019. Rodriguez wasn't just a champion, he was undefeated, with a perfect record of 19 wins. Many believed this would be Naoya's toughest fight yet. But what happened that night wasn't a fight, it was a dismantling. In just 2 rounds, Naoya turned Rodriguez's undefeated record into a distant memory. A right hook, then a left to the body, and finally a devastating uppercut sent Rodriguez crashing to the canvas. The fight was over before the crowd even had time to process what they were seeing. Naoya walked away with the IBF Bantamweight title and a reputation that now bordered on mythical. But if there's one fight that defines Naoya Inoue's career, it's the war he waged later that year against Nonito Donaire. Donaire wasn't just another opponent. He was a legend, a 4-division world champion, a future Hall of Famer, and someone who wasn't going to back down, no matter how dangerous the monster was. From the opening bell, it was a clash of wills. In the second round, Donaire landed a brutal left hook that opened a deep cut above Naoya's right eye, leaving him bleeding and vulnerable. But instead of backing down, Naoya fought harder. Round after round, the two traded blows in a battle that left the crowd breathless. Then, in the 11th round, with both men exhausted and battered, Naoya landed one of the most devastating punches of his career. A left hook to the liver that sent Donaire crumpling to the canvas. Donaire somehow got back to his feet and finished the fight, but the decision was clear. Naoya had won, and with that victory, he unified the WBA, IBF, and Ring Magazine Bantamweight titles. The fight was so intense, so raw that it was named Fight of the Year, a battle between two warriors that fans would never forget. But for Naoya, there was still unfinished business. In 2022, he faced Donaire in a highly anticipated rematch. This time, it wasn't a war, it was a massacre. Naoya knocked Donaire down in the first round, then finished him with a brutal combination in the second. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. With that win, Naoya became the first undisputed bantamweight champion in 50 years, 4 belts, total dominance. And yet, even after cleaning out the division, the monster wasn't done. His hunger for greatness pushed him to move up once again, this time to super bantamweight, a division full of new challenges, new opponents, and new victims. But could anyone stop him there? Or would Naoya Inoue continue his path of destruction, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest boxers of all time? The answer was coming, and the world was about to witness something extraordinary. For most fighters, becoming a multi-division world champion would be enough. They'd bask in the glory, the accolades, the cheers of the crowd. But Naoya Inoue, he doesn't stop. He doesn't rest. Because for him, boxing isn't just about titles. It's about leaving a legacy. In Japan, Naoya isn't just a sports star. He's a national hero, a symbol of discipline, precision, and relentless pursuit of excellence. In a country where humility and hard work are deeply valued, Naoya embodies everything the culture holds sacred. But his impact goes beyond boxing. He's shattered stereotypes about what Japanese fighters can achieve on the global stage. Historically, Japanese boxers dominated dominated the lower weight classes but rarely earned the same recognition as fighters from powerhouse countries like the US or Mexico. Naoya changed that. He didn't just compete internationally, he dominated. Every time he steps into the ring, millions of Japanese fans tune in, many waking up at dawn to watch their hero fight live. Streets empty, families gather, and the nation collectively holds its breath. For those few minutes, the entire country unites behind one man. And yet, despite his global fame, Naoya remains humble. He doesn't flaunt his success or seek the spotlight. Instead, he credits his team, his family, and his fans. In every post-fight interview, he carries himself with the same quiet respect that's defined him since day one. But his influence isn't just limited to Japan. Across the world, fans and fighters alike marvel at what Naoya has accomplished. He's inspired a new generation of boxers who want to emulate his mix of power, speed, and technical brilliance. Even his opponents respect him. After their rematch, Nonito Donaire called him one of the best fighters of all time. Stephen Fulton, who Naoya dismantled in the super bantamweight division, admitted that facing him felt like stepping into a storm he couldn't escape. And here's the thing, Naoya's story isn't over. He's still climbing, still fighting, still chasing greatness. But perhaps the most extraordinary part of his legacy isn't just the belts or the knockouts, it's the way he's redefined what's possible. He's shown the world that size, weight, and even geography don't matter when you have the skill, the determination, and the heart of a champion. Inoue doesn't just carry the hopes of a nation, he carries the hopes of anyone who's ever dreamed of doing the impossible. And as his career continues, one question remains. How much further can Naoya Inoue go? Because if his past is any indication, the answer is simple. As far as he wants. Naoya Inoue has already accomplished what most fighters can only dream of. He's conquered 4 weight classes, unified titles, himself as one of the greatest boxers of all time. But the thing about Naoya, he's never satisfied. For most fighters, being the first undisputed bantamweight champion in 50 years would have been the pinnacle of their careers. But Naoya isn't like most fighters. Just weeks after dominating Nonito Donaire in their rematch and claiming every major belt in the division, he made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the boxing world. He was moving up again. His target, the super bantamweight division, a new weight class, new opponents, and new risks. At 122 pounds, the fighters are bigger, stronger, and more experienced. And at the top of that division stood Stephen Fulton, an undefeated unified champion. For months, fans speculated, could the monster's power carry into this heavier weight class? Could he dominate fighters who had a clear size advantage, or would this finally be the moment when someone stopped him? The fight took place in Tokyo, with the eyes of the world watching. Stephen Fulton entered the ring as a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, confident in his size, reach, and skill. But Naoya Inoue doesn't care about the odds. From the opening bell, he dismantled Fulton with surgical precision. By the 8th round, the monster struck. A straight right hand sent Fulton crashing into the ropes. He got up, but Naoya didn't let him off the hook. Seconds later, a brutal left hook ended the fight, leaving no doubt. Naoya Inoue wasn't just a bantamweight champion, he was a super bantamweight king. But even that wasn't enough. On December 26, 2023, facing the formidable Marlon Tapales, Inoue didn't just step into the ring, he stepped into history. Tapales wasn't an underdog, he was a champion with everything to prove. But Inoue, he came with something far more dangerous, a vision to become the undisputed super bantamweight champion. The outcome? A brutal 10th round knockout that left the world in awe and etched Inoue's name as the first ever to unify all 4 titles in the division. Just months later, in May 2024, he faced a challenge that could have shattered any fighter's confidence, a knockdown in the first round against Luis Neri. For the first time in his career, Inoue hit the canvas. The crowd gasped. Was this the end of the undefeated monster? Not even close. By the 6th round, Inoue turned the tide, delivering a jaw-dropping knockout and proving that even when pushed to the brink, he is utterly unstoppable. And then came September, when Inoue squared off against TJ Doheny. It wasn't just about defending his titles, it was about showcasing why he's considered one of the pound-for-pound best. Doheny, a former IBF champion, came prepared, but against Inoue, preparation wasn't enough. A devastating body shot in the 7th round sealed the fight, leaving no doubt that Inoue's dominance was far from over. Now the question on everyone's mind is simple. What's next for the monster? On January 24th, 2025, Naoya Inoue steps back into the ring, this time against Sam Goodman, an undefeated challenger with everything to gain. Can Inoue continue his reign of terror, or will Goodman pull off what many believe to be impossible? And if Naoya wins, what's next? Will he move up again, or will he finally leave the sport, not just as a champion, but as a legend? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, wherever Naoya Inoue goes next, the world will be watching. So what do you think? Can anyone stop the monster, or is Naoya Inoue destined to leave the sport as the greatest boxer of his generation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're here, smash that like button with a knockout punch, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world's greatest athletes, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. This is the rise of a legend, and the story is far from over. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.